a very special edition of Gutfeld. I'm Dana Perino, filling in for Greg, who I hear is off hiding Jesse's hairpiece somewhere. So today is National Email Day, and some Americans are celebrating by deleting them. Today is also Spanish Language Day, and to celebrate, a confused President Biden is planning to address the nation in French. Actor Michael Douglas says Joe Biden is, quote, sharp as a tack. Well, here's the tack. Streaming service CNN Plus, which operated for exactly 1 month in 2022, it might be making a comeback. Talk about a twice-baked potato. Ilhan Omar's daughter complains she's homeless and broke after getting kicked out of college for her anti-Semitic views. Even worse, now she can't afford to get her uncle a gift for Father's Day. And finally, according to a new study, many seniors think 75 is the new 65, while others think 150 is a new 120. All right, let's get to the monologue. So I saw this over the weekend. Axios reported that during his presidency, Joe Biden has refused to give a single interview to the New York Times, the Washington Post, or the Wall Street Journal. And he's the only president in living memory to refuse an interview with the Times. So what happened to the Biden promise of a return to norms? Normal would be a president who actually talks to his constituents in coherent sentences without needing closed captions. You know things are bad when the best speech the president's given is this one.
I have one word: don't. Don't.
Not exactly the Gettysburg Address. Joe would struggle reciting his mailing address. His speechwriters must have the easiest job on earth. They definitely don't get paid by the word. On the other hand, at least that's a speech he could remember. Meanwhile, the excuses from the White House press often are laughable. Part of the president's job is actually to hold press conferences. But this guy comes to work less than Harold Ford Jr. And this was supposed to be the most transparent administration ever, remember? Mr. President, was it something we said, like asking a question? Because the only time Joe Biden seems willing to answer anything is when Marine One is going full blast behind him. Do you think if we fit a helicopter in the White House briefing room, though, he might actually hold a press conference? And maybe John Kirby could just stand behind him and make helicopter noises. Now, compare this to Donald Trump, who gave us about all the access we could handle. Almost too much. And no reporter ever said, I really wish this Trump guy would stop holding back so much. If Biden has been ghosting us, Trump was stalking us. But at least you knew where he stood, right out on your front lawn wanting to talk. Remember that one? So where is Joe Biden now, as radicalized college kids with more privilege than brains threaten Jewish students? Shouldn't he take that personally, as he grew up in Jewish temples, as well as black churches, Puerto Rican bodegas, and Chinese laundromats? Has the president ever explained what happened in Afghanistan? Now, I realize that's a distant memory to him, but then again, so is today's breakfast. Or how our intel agencies missed the October 7th attack on Israel, or why he had no idea his Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, was missing for over a week. Or why his shoes are on the wrong feet. Has he ever stood at the lectern and explained his energy policy, his plan on fentanyl, his southern border solution? Instead, he blathers about an uncle getting eaten by cannibals when his plane was shot down over Gilligan's Island. And now a big part of the blame here goes to the committee to re-elect Joe Biden. That's otherwise known as the White House Press Corps. These silly helicopter moments should not be tolerated. The reporter should refuse to ask questions of a U.S. president over the noise of two 5,000-horsepower engines. And when he does take a question or two, he shields himself by saying this.
I better not start the questions. I'll get in trouble.
What's your message for Tuesday voters?
The only question he takes seriously is, would you like that in a cup or a cone? Sir, I just have a little advice. You are the commander-in-chief. Tell your press office to pound sand if you really want to talk to reporters. And of course, the rest of the media just plays along. Look at the soft headlines in the New York Times about the campus protests, the fawning how Kamala got her groove back stories. Is really that what Kamala has, is a groove? I thought it was nitrous oxide.
I think you just fell out of a coconut tree.
Some people understand what I'm talking about.
Heartbeat away, people. Just a heartbeat away. So the White House seems to believe that they just need to show Biden giving a few more fiery speeches. Guys, heads up, that's not working. Because right now, Biden's numbers on health and competency compared to Trump, they're not getting any better. And all this comes as we head into Washington's most ridiculous week, and that is saying something. It's the White House Correspondents' Dinner this weekend, which is supposed to be about good journalism and students winning scholarships, though I'd be suspicious of any awards from Columbia University, especially if it's making a ticking sound. Instead, it's a night of the media fawning all over themselves. But it's the perfect chance for the White House press corps to stand up for itself and demand more from this White House. So, will they do it? Well, if you were going to bet on that happening, as a very mediocre president once said, don't. All right, so happy to be here and want to welcome tonight's guest. As a former cop, he likes to spend his free time frisking himself. Fox News contributor Paul Morrow. You know how she spells Charlie? Any damn way she wants. Outkick.com host Charlie Arnold is here. When she goes on a rant, she packs a suitcase. New York Times best-selling author and Fox News contributor Kat Timm. And his quads have their own agent. His calves do not. New York Times best-selling author, comedian, and former NWA world champion. All right, guys. So, Paul, we're a little over 6 months away from the election, and you've got the recent polls saying that, you know, it's kind of neck and neck, but Trump is ahead by a bit in most of the battleground states. Right. Do you think that it's panic time for the Democrats, and do you think that Biden will debate Trump?
I do. I think the optic is so bad if he doesn't. But, you know, the problem with that, as you can see, is the overall strategy is a buffer, right? It's like that scene in The Godfather when he says, yeah, Senator, it was a lot of buffers, right? There's a buffer at all times between the leader of the free world and the population. And the reason is because they're afraid if we leave him alone, he's going to start talking about corn popping cannibals. And what the hell is corn? It sounds like a breakfast cereal. Where the hell? I think he must have had that for breakfast when it came into his head. So I don't understand where they think this can go, because you can't hide him for another 6 months. And I think at some point here, they're going to have to bite the bullet and they're going to say, look, you got to sink or swim, because the optic is so bad if they continue to hide him. At least one debate, maybe they just check the box and move on, but I think they got to do at least one.
Do you think that they are hedging their bets, Charlie, and trying to get it to a point where they say, they said it depends, Biden said it depends on how Trump behaves, whether he'll debate him?
Yeah, absolutely. He's trying to pin this on Trump rather than his own devices. He knows that he can't stand on his own 2 feet. Quite literally, he stumbles all over himself all the time. He knows that he can't go off script. If you put it into a debate situation, what's going to happen there? I mean, we can only imagine the comedy that would ensue. So he's trying to pin this on Donald Trump. We'll see how he behaves. In matter of fact, why would I even want to debate a criminal? That's the kind of argument he's making right now. It makes absolutely no sense. But I think the best thing his comms team can do, the only thing they have done, frankly, in his favor up to this point, is keep him out of the public eye and not allow him to do any type of one-on-one interviews, and up to this point, not debate Trump.
It's interesting, Kat, because I've never seen a poll in a presidential election year on competency. Like, that is just like sort of a given. But now we have these polls on competency, and one way for the White House to show that Joe Biden is fully competent would be to debate.
Yeah.
Or not.
I was saying months ago that they were going to try to make the point of, oh, well, you can't normalize Trump in this way. And the excuses don't really make sense. I mean, that Axios, I read that article talking about how he doesn't speak to the media. And a White House official said, OK, well, but his travel schedule is far more demanding than any president. I don't know if that's true, but even if it is, there's like a level of power and prestige where I feel like traveling isn't even hard. Like Air Force One has a bet on it, right? I'm Tyrus, I know you can definitely relate to this. I mean, my tour schedule is really grueling, but the reasons for it don't apply to Joe Biden. Like, I'm in Syracuse and Rochester this weekend, not that far from New York City, but I still got to get up really early, take an early flight, because there aren't that many options for flights. Otherwise, I get there too late. He gets to pick when the plane lands. Doesn't have to go through. He just doesn't have to go through.
For him.
They pack for him. There's probably a doctor on there, give him whatever IV treatments he wants. He just walks onto the plane right into the bed. That's easy.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's.
It is pretty incredible, Tyrus, to think. I mean, you're a competitor. You like to get in the ring. Biden says he's like a big fighter, that he would like to go out back and fight. Like, did he go get in the ring in the debate?
Okay, Dana. He would 1,000% debate President Trump, and he would wipe the floor with him with anecdotes and epitaphs and clever gotcha moments. But he does not consort with criminals or a coup, because that's the new word. You can't let a guy who's gonna go to jail and he's trying to take away democracy, and you're gonna give this cad, this upstart cooer, a platform to speak to the president? Absolutely not on my watch as an American citizen. No, he can't. Criminals shouldn't be allowed to speak with presidents. I have said this since this whole conversation even started a year ago. There will be no debate. No way. And they've already laid it out. He's a threat to democracy. He's a dictator. Hillary Clinton, although it was owed to OJ Day, said that he was going to kill his enemies. So they're running this whole thing to where Lex Luthor is running for president. So that's what it's going to be. There is no debate, because there can't be one.
But okay, so that makes me ask a question, Paul. If the presidential candidates don't debate, do the vice presidential candidates debate?
Oh, my God.
Right? Because it would be Kamala Harris versus some unknown person.
What a train wreck.
Tim Scott.
She could debate some unknown person and still lose.
Oh, my gosh.
Listen, think about it for a second. Think about the substance of this conversation. We're not asking a lot. We're just asking for the guy to talk.
Right.
That's not really a lot. If you want to be president, if you want to be in charge of the nuclear football, coherent sentences, not that high a bar.
Well, it has been really driving me crazy, and you indulged me, all of you indulged me a little bit in the monologue. It's driving me crazy, Charlie, that the White House press office does not say, Mr. President, we need you to make some news today on anti-Semitism on campuses. So top your speech with it, or actually maybe take some questions. Have a reporter come in, do an interview. Instead, they just let shouted questions go to him, and then we are supposed to close caption it so that you can all understand what the president's saying. And then the next thing Karine Jean-Pierre will say is, the president's been perfectly clear.
Dana, since we are in your presence, you did a fantastic job in your position as press secretary. We unfortunately cannot say the same about Karine Jean-Pierre. She is god-awful at her job. I just actually had the opportunity to interview Caroline Leavitt, Trump's press secretary, the other day. She was mind-blowingly smart. So just on top of it, and the contrast just blew me away. But also what blows me away is the contrast of just how the candidates are addressing their constituents. You saw Trump go into a fast food restaurant, everybody coming up to him, he's giving them hugs, high fives, he was all about it. And then you see Biden walk into a restaurant, and his team is saying, everybody get back, don't come anywhere near.
I don't think there were a lot of people there. And also, if his campaign can't fill a Wawa with people that can support Biden, they've got bigger problems. After the show, I'm going to ask you and Kat to tell me what grade you were in when I was press secretary. I'm surprised you were watching.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.